Hello and welcome to This Really Happened, a place where unbelievable, heart-touching true stories come to life. Sometimes surprising, sometimes bittersweet, always real. Grab a drink and settle in. We're about to begin. Alice closed the last file, rubbing her tired eyes. Her gaze slid to the clock. "Wow, it's 10 already," she exclaimed in surprise. The phone in her hand immediately showed 3 missed calls from Paul. Tapping her pen nervously on the desk, she started calling him back. Long rings were replaced by her fiancé's displeased voice just as Alice was about to give up. "Yes, darling?" she heard her own voice, sounding guilty and fawning. "I'm sorry." Paul sighed. Silence hung on the line, but he didn't hang up. Already a good sign. "I know I promised to come home early today," she continued, sensing his unspoken reproach. "But the project—" Paul interrupted sharply. "The project, of course, Alice. I understand. Work is the most important thing. Only you're marrying me, not a project." Alice softened her voice. "Paul, our wedding is in a month. I know." "All right, I'll wait for you at home." "I'll be there soon, darling." Putting down the phone, Alice slowly exhaled. How could she forget her promise to finish early? However, it wasn't surprising. Work had been her passion for many years, her only one, until Paul appeared 2 years ago. Smiling, she looked at the elegant diamond ring on her finger, remembering his nervousness, the proposal on one knee, the sound of the violinist and the restaurant's applause, her tearful yes. Only a year had passed, but her relationship with Paul had noticeably changed. He blamed her endless work for it, although she had always worked a lot, even at the beginning of their acquaintance. True, a year ago she was promoted and the workload increased. Now, a project on which the future of the firm depended was at stake, and Alice couldn't let her colleagues down. Paul didn't understand this. When she arrived home, he was already asleep. Alice gently stroked his head. He snuffled like a child, but didn't wake up. Sighing, she went to the bathroom, knowing he would be silent again tomorrow morning. The mirror reflected a slender, tall brunette with a perfect bob and huge black eyes framed by long lashes. Could such a woman really spend her days cooped up at a computer in an office? Alice smiled at her reflection. The decision was made. This week she would take a day off. She would tidy herself up, put on a beautiful dress, do her hair and makeup. She would order dinner and wine, put on music, and wait for him to come home from work. Perhaps then he would forgive her. Of course, she would have to promise to work less, and maybe after the project was finished, she really could leave on time. Alice was used to hard work from early childhood. No one, seeing her now in a designer suit, in an expensive foreign car, with a perfect manicure, would believe she grew up in a village. Despite its proximity to the city, it was a real backwater with bad roads, dilapidated houses, and animals roaming freely. That's how she remembered her small homeland. Alice was raised by her grandmother, although her parents were alive. Her mother divorced her father when Alice was 4, and she barely remembered him. Her first vivid memory was a long, bumpy ride with her mother on an old bus, with many bags and suitcases. At her grandmother's in the village, little Alice had a good time, playing all day with the neighbourhood children, her grandmother's pies. But her mother didn't like it there, and after a few months, she left for the city. She promised to get settled, find a place, and take her daughter immediately. At first she came every 2 weeks, then less often, and then she arrived with news of her marriage. Alice remembered Uncle Leo, who seemed unnaturally eager to please, with an insincere smile. But her mother was happy with him. They weren't in a hurry to pick up Alice. "Why doesn't Mom come for me?" the girl asked her grandmother. She only sighed, explaining that they had a small apartment, and immediately added, "Aren't you happy with me?" "No, Grandma." And so they lived together, just the two of them. Gradually, Alice got used to it. Her grandmother, Eleanor, was kind, cheerful, and never despaired. In any circumstances, she would repeat to her granddaughter, "The main thing is that we are alive and healthy. As long as our hands and feet are whole and our heads work, everything can be fixed." Her nickname, Little Alice, stuck for a long time. But no matter how much her grandmother held on, age took its toll, and Alice understood early on that her grandmother needed help. Her mother initially sent a little money, but after getting married, she stopped. Her grandmother's pension was barely enough. The garden, chickens, and goat helped them survive, but Alice knew it wouldn't be like this forever. It was up to her, Alice, to work to provide a decent life for herself and her grandmother. From childhood, she looked for ways to earn money. Neighbouring women went to the city to sell produce, and Alice wanted to too, but her grandmother wouldn't let her. "You're too small for the city and the market. We'll have enough money, don't worry." Alice heard her words, but saw how her grandmother denied herself many things. She didn't buy new clothes, and her winter boots were being repaired for the 4th time. "If you won't let me go to the city, I'll earn money here," the granddaughter stubbornly declared. She did everything possible, collected berries and mushrooms for resellers. Once a week, a man came who bought medicinal herbs. Her grandmother showed her where to find them, and the girl would go into the forest early in the morning. She also learned that the local shop accepted empty bottles. Many people in the village didn't want to wash them for statue, returning for deposit, but Alice didn't mind. She collected bottles from houses, brought them to the yard, and washed them, getting rid of villagers' clutter and earning a little. She also collected scrap metal with the boys. The leader of their group, freckled Andy, explained the rules. "If you want to join us, fine. What you find is yours. But don't think you're just a girl. Carry for everyone. Carry as much as you can." Of course, she couldn't carry as much as the boys, but she still earned a lot. The girl quickly realized that she should look not for the heaviest things, but for the most valuable, copper, and learned to find it in old cars at the dump. With this money, she bought clothes, shoes, and school supplies for herself. And she always kept a close eye on her grandmother's wardrobe so that Eleanor lacked nothing. "You're my little breadwinner," her grandmother would say, with tears of emotion when her granddaughter handed her money. "When I grow up, Grandma," Alice would reply, "I'll take you to the city. I'll buy us a big, big house, and we'll live there. You won't have to work in the garden anymore." Eleanor only laughed. "I live well here too, my little one, but if you don't forget your old grandmother, I'll be very happy." At school, Alice excelled, especially in exact sciences and geography. She mastered other subjects too, but didn't consider them useful for her future life. After the 11th grade, she enrolled in economics at the best university in the city. When her mother found out, she offered her a place to live. "I'll be fine in the dormitory," Alice replied, knowing that her mother and her husband had a son 2 years ago and were cramped for space themselves. After her brother was born, her mother seemed to have completely forgotten about her. Of course, Alice pretended not to be offended, but sometimes at night, when her grandmother was asleep, she would cry into her pillow, wondering why her mother loved her brother more. She also studied well at university, despite working from the first year and sending monthly transfers to her grandmother. "You'll see, Grandma," Alice would say, "I'll finish university, get a job at a cool firm, move you here, and we'll live well." Her grandmother only smiled in response. The main thing is that you are well, granddaughter." Alice passed all her exams with excellent marks, received a red diploma, and was getting ready to go to the village when her mother called. "Alice," she sobbed into the phone, "your grandmother has died." Everyone went to the village together, her mother, her husband, Alice, and little Stevie. The following week passed for Alice in a haze of shock. Her mother and stepfather handled the funeral while Alice looked after her brother. She sat on the floor in her familiar grandmother's house, watching Stevie play, and thought, what now? She had promised her grandmother she would take her, buy a house. What was the point of trying any more? After the funeral, her mother said, "Alice, I need to talk." "Of course, Mom," Alice replied. "We found your grandmother's will," her mother continued. "She wanted this house to go to you." Alice shrugged indifferently. "It doesn't matter to me. I won't live here anyway. Everything reminds me of Grandma and my childhood." "Do as you wish," her mother sighed. A week later, Alice gathered her courage and returned to the city. This was the life she had dreamed of since childhood. She got a job and spent the following years just climbing the ladder. At 28, she became the youngest managing director in a large company. Her personal life didn't work out, or rather, Alice didn't let anyone in until she met Paul. Maybe it was love at first sight, maybe it was just time for strong feelings. But mutual attraction arose immediately. Paul was her complete opposite, easygoing, cheerful, carefree. He balanced her seriousness. Paul had his own fitness studio. He started as a trainer, then built a team and opened his business. Alice immediately warned him that she worked a lot. Paul replied, "I love my job too, and if I finish early, I'll cook dinner and wait for my beautiful girl." At first, it was like that, but lately, Paul had been getting increasingly annoyed by her work. They started arguing. Then Alice decided to make a surprise. She acted as usual, so her fiancé wouldn't suspect anything. After the argument, she started calling and texting more often. During one of these conversations, she asked, "What time are you finishing today?" "Why?" Paul asked warily. "Nothing," Alice replied immediately. "I'm staying late again today. Sorry." She thought she heard him sigh with relief. "Well, I'll be back late too today, so it's okay." Alice smiled. "Thank you for understanding everything." "Of course, darling." He hung up. "He's probably still upset," Alice sighed. "Never mind, I'll melt his heart today." Her new dress had just arrived, thin, made of delicate red fabric, perfectly emphasizing her figure. "In this dress, he'll definitely forgive me," Alice thought with satisfaction, putting it back in the box. Her colleagues were surprised when she announced she was leaving early, but no one dared to ask aloud. Alice arrived home, parked in her usual spot, and was surprised to see her fiancé's car next to hers. He must have taken a taxi today, she thought, too excited to wait for the elevator. She ran up to the 5th floor. Opening the door, she froze on the threshold. Paul's sneakers and some red women's sandals were lying in the hallway. No, she thought, this only happens in bad comedies. Taking a deep breath and exhaling, trying to compose herself, she calmly placed the box with the dress on the floor, took off her shoes, and slowly walked further into the apartment. Almost immediately, she heard her fiancé's voice from the bedroom. Alice slowly entered the room. The first thing she saw was Paul's back, and then the girl. "Well, well," Alice said calmly. "So I wasn't imagining things when I heard the joy in your voice at the news that I would be coming home late today." Paul spun around sharply, such fright in his eyes that Alice found it funny. The young blonde girl shrieked loudly and pulled the blanket over herself. "Alice!" Paul breathed out in astonishment. She expected excuses, pleas for forgiveness, any ridiculous reason, but her fiancé managed to surprise her. He sighed sadly and said, "Well, perhaps it's for the best." Then he turned to the girl huddled under the blanket. "Jane, wait for me in the car, please. I'll be down in half an hour." Alice watched with surprise as Jane timidly got out, quickly got dressed, and disappeared into the hallway. A second later, the front door slammed shut. "All right," Alice said. "And what does all this mean?" Paul sat on the bed, rubbing his temples tiredly. "It means I'm tired and I've been thinking for a long time that we should break up." Alice walked over and sat next to him. "But why?" she asked. "I thought we just had some minor problems." Her fiancé shook his head. "The problem is deeper. We're too different. It's not even that you work a lot, but that work is more important to you than I am, and it always has been." He looked at her. "And I can't live like that. I'm wired differently. I'm not a go-getter. I like to work, but I'm not ready to live in the gym like you live in the office. I want to enjoy life, and you don't know how." "Well, I guess you're right. It will be better for both of us. I'm sorry," Paul finished. He stood up, took out a suitcase, and started packing his things. Alice went to the kitchen and sat there until she heard the front door slam. "All right," Alice told herself. "At least I have my job. I'll finish the project soon, take a vacation, and start a new life." But nothing went according to plan. A week later, arriving at work, she found the office being searched. "Ms. Alice," a strange man in a black suit addressed her. "Yes?" she replied, surprised. "What's happening?" He ignored the question. "Come to your office. I need to take your statement." It turned out the firm's management was suspected of major fraud. Work was frozen, and the accounts and property of key employees were seized. "Wait," Alice said. "Does that mean my property is seized too?" "Yes, your car, apartment, and all bank accounts." "And for how long?" "Until the circumstances are clarified," he replied coldly. But I had absolutely no idea. What should I do? Stay with friends or relatives. Alice signed the papers and went home. She was allowed to take necessary items before leaving the apartment for an indefinite period. On the way, she called her lawyer, but he wasn't encouraging. "The accusations are serious," he said. "Investigations into such cases take a long time, months, even years." "And my property will be under arrest all this time?" He sighed. "I'm afraid so, Miss Alice." The only place she could go was her old grandmother's little house in the village. After her grandmother's death, Alice had never been back. At first glance, the house hadn't changed. It had just become more dilapidated. Alice took an old, rusted lock from her bag. "Hello, Grandma," she said quietly. As a child, the house seemed bigger. Now everything looked small, old, but painfully familiar. Alice walked through the room and sat on the bed where she used to sleep. "What should I do now, Grandma?" she asked the empty room. "I thought I had everything. It turns out you can lose everything in an instant. A fiancé, love, career, money, apartment. What's left? Your little house that I forgot about?" And then, for the first time in many years, she cried bitterly and heavily. Alice woke up in the morning. She hadn't noticed falling asleep and had forgotten to draw the curtains, so the bright sunlight woke her. "Well, there you go," she sighed. "I've woken up without an alarm for so many years, and yesterday I even forgot to set one, although why would I need an alarm? I don't have a job." Her stomach rumbled, and Alice remembered she hadn't eaten anything since yesterday's lunch. There was, of course, nothing edible in her grandmother's house. She had to go to the shop. It was still very early, and Alice decided to spend this time cleaning. As she tidied up, sweeping away years of accumulated dust, she was subtly distracted from her sad thoughts. Perhaps, if this drags on, I'll have to look for work here, Alice mused. Maybe I'll start a farm, chickens, geese, maybe even a cow. After cleaning, she was even hungrier, and Alice went to the shop with relief, seeing that the time was right. She walked through the village, noting with surprise that it was better than in her childhood. New houses had appeared, old ones were repaired and painted. The shop in its usual place shone with a new sign. The sign is painted, not printed, Alice thought. And the artist is talented. Local, I wonder. She went inside, surprised by the cleanliness, coziness, and assortment. The shop assistant, a young, pretty girl, smiled privetliveau and approached. "Good morning," she said. "You're our first customer today." Alice smiled back. "Good morning to you too. It's nice to hear." "Have you come to stay for the summer?" the girl asked. "I don't know yet. How did you guess so quickly that I'm not local?" "There aren't many residents here. I know everyone by sight." Alice laughed. "Right, I didn't think of that. I lived here until I was 17, then moved to the city." She looked thoughtfully at the shop assistant. "It's strange. You're younger than me, but not by much. In theory, I should remember you." The girl smiled. "No, I only arrived a year ago with my older brother." "Oh, really?" Alice was surprised. "To live?" "Yeah. I didn't think anyone would voluntarily want to move to such a backwater." Anna seemed a little offended. "That's not fair. It's very nice here. Not far from the city, beautiful nature, clean air. My brother wanted to come. He's an artist." "Oh, really?" Alice exclaimed. "So he painted the sign? It's very beautiful." "Thank you, I'll be sure to tell him, but I've kept you talking. You came to shop." "It was very interesting. By the way, my name is Alice." "Nice to meet you, Anna." The shop assistant decisively extended a small, strong hand, which Alice shook. After that, Alice dictated her shopping list. Anna quickly brought what was needed, advising on what was best. In the end, the girls were pleased with each other. "Where do you live?" Anna asked. "The second to last house at the edge of the village, towards the lake," Alice said. "That's great!" Anna exclaimed happily. "My brother and I live in the last house. I'll definitely introduce you sometime." "Okay," Alice replied. "I'd be happy to." The weather was beautiful, and Alice decided to eat outside. She didn't feel like cooking, so she made cheese and sausage sandwiches on fresh bread, brewed tea, and went out onto the porch. The sun was shining, birds were singing. Alice sat, ate, and enjoyed the summer day. She thought with surprise that she couldn't remember the last time she had just sat like this, without work, plans, or thoughts of business. Suddenly, a meow sounded near her feet. Alice turned her head and saw a fat striped cat that had silently climbed onto the porch and was now looking at her plate with interest. "Judging by your appearance, you're not starving," Alice remarked. The cat looked intently and repeated meow insistently. "All right, you blackmailer, here." She pulled out a piece of sausage and gave it to the cat. It sniffed, took it carefully, put it on the porch and started eating. "Enjoy your meal," Alice said and closed her eyes, basking in the sun. But her peace was disturbed again. "Sandro!" a man's voice called out nearby. "Sandro, where are you? Ran off to the neighbour's house again?" Alice looked at the cat, but it didn't react. "It seems that's you," Alice remarked. "Sandro, are you here?" The gate swung open, and she saw a handsome, blue-eyed man with curly blonde hair and a small reddish beard. He clearly hadn't expected to see anyone here but the cat and looked embarrassed. "Excuse me, please. That's my cat. He keeps running off to this house. Sometimes I come to catch him. But honestly, I haven't touched anything here except the cat." Alice smiled. "It's all right. You have a very nice cat." She looked at Sandro, who, having finished the sausage, was washing himself. "He's already begged food from you too," the cat's owner said ruefully. "It's impossible to refuse him," Alice replied. "And you, I suppose, are the artist, Anna's brother?" "That's right," he said in surprise. "I don't think I've earned that title yet, at least in a good way. But yes, I'm Anna's brother, Arthur." He extended his hand, strong and large, like his sister's. "Alice," the girl said, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you." "If I had known someone lived here, I wouldn't have intruded so unceremoniously," he said. "I only arrived yesterday," Alice replied. "So you couldn't have known about me. And I met your sister a couple of hours ago at the shop." "Well, then it's all clear. Are you staying long?" "I don't know myself yet, but most likely, yes." Arthur picked up the cat, who meowed discontentedly but didn't resist. "Come visit us any time," Arthur said. "I'm often home if I don't go somewhere. My sister works until 6, then she'll come too." "Okay," Alice replied. "I'll definitely stop by sometime. Just give me a couple of days to settle in and get everything in order here." "Of course," Arthur replied. "If you need help, just ask. The doors of our house are always open. Literally." The neighbour and the cat left, and Alice reached for her phone. She was waiting for a call, from the lawyer with good news or from Paul. Thinking of him, she cursed. "Business. I'll go do something useful." Alice spent the rest of the day tidying up the house. She washed the windows, swept away cobwebs, vacuumed the furniture and the huge, heavy rug that covered the entire room. For as long as she could remember, it had always been there. Her grandmother, it seemed, had never taken it out, cleaning it in place. It must have been made of quality material because it remained thick over the years, only the colours had faded. At first, Alice wanted to take it out, but when she grabbed a corner, she realised how heavy it was. "Let it stay here," she decided. "Grandma never moved it for a reason." She spent the first couple of days cleaning, and there was no time to think about anything else. Now that her grandmother's house was in order, visiting the neighbours seemed like a good idea. "Anna is a very sweet, lively girl," Alice thought. "We'll find common ground. She has a business streak, and her brother is probably just a sweet eccentric. Well, you can talk to people like that too." Out of curiosity, she decisively stood up, left the house, hung the same rusted lock on the door, and headed towards her neighbours. She immediately noticed how different their house was. Alice didn't remember who lived there in her childhood, but it must have been a simple village house. Now it was renovated, plastered, and painted a delicate salmon colour. Beautiful, Alice thought, and very unusual. She walked up to the gate and pushed it. It wasn't locked. An old SUV was parked in the yard. Anna probably used it to get supplies. And there were flowers in the yard, just ordinary wildflowers. It seemed strange because they were usually considered weeds, pulled up, while flower beds were planted with cultivated flowers. "Arthur," Alice called out. "Anna!" "Meow," came the reply. Sandro was sitting on the porch, squinting in the sun. "Hello, buddy," Alice greeted him. "And where's your owner?" "I'm here." A voice sounded unexpectedly close, making her jump. Alice hadn't noticed she was standing by an open window from which Arthur had replied. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you." "It's all right. I was just bored at home. Remembered your invitation." Arthur smiled. "I'm very glad. My sister was upset you weren't coming over. She wanted to stop by tonight." He winked slyly. "If you're not busy now, we could take a walk. I was just looking for a new spot for a painting." Alice shrugged. She didn't like pointless walks, but there was nothing else to do. "Okay," she replied. "Then I'm coming." Arthur came out of the house and a few minutes later appeared with a huge backpack on his shoulders. "I'm ready," he said. "Let's go." "Shouldn't you close the door?" Alice reminded him. "And the windows? What if someone gets in?" He shrugged. "Everyone here seems decent, but if someone decides to, well, that's on their conscience." What a philosophy, Alice thought, but said nothing. They went out the gate, and Arthur confidently led her along a path. At first, Alice thought they would go to the lake at the end of the village, where she used to swim as a child. But they walked past the shore without stopping. "Tell me about yourself," Arthur suddenly asked. "You're so mysterious." Alice smiled. "I don't know why you decided that. This house was empty. I needed a place to live. I moved in, that's all." "Well, it's up to you. I won't pry. It's just that you're clearly not the kind of person who would come here voluntarily." "Well, then I can say that you and your sister are no less mysterious figures." He laughed. "That's true. What do you think? Maybe we'll stop here. It seems like a good spot." Lost in conversation, Alice didn't notice how they had reached a small hill overlooking the lake. "It's beautiful," Alice admitted. "I lived here for so many years, but I never saw it from this angle." Arthur gave her a blanket, which she spread out and sat on. The artist took out his easel, canvas, paints, and brushes from his backpack. The day was warm, not hot, and she enjoyed the outing. "If I talk to you, will it bother you much?" she asked. Arthur shook his head. "Not at all. My hands paint, but my head can be busy with anything, and talking to such a smart, interesting girl is doubly pleasant." Alice smiled. "Okay. Will you be offended if I ask something personal?" He shrugged. "I'm not easily offended, I think. You can try." "Your work. It's not very profitable, is it? Especially in the village." "True, but it's enough to live on. The main thing is I'm doing what I love, just like my sister. She has a great shop," Alice remarked. "It seems she knows how to run a business." Arthur smiled. "From the first glance, I understood that you and Anna are similar." Alice decided to be honest. "Yes, I feel a connection when people have a passion they dedicate themselves to completely and get maximum results." "In monetary terms?" Arthur clarified with a smile. "And are you against money?" "No, it's just that different people need different amounts of it. Many don't know how to earn it and console themselves by saying money isn't everything." She stopped herself, thinking that Arthur probably thought that. But the artist wasn't offended. He just smiled. "Well, I really do think that," he said. "Of course, I'm not an ascetic. I don't want to live in a hut. But the life I lead suits me, and I'm happy." "Well, I'm happy for you," Alice replied, "but I'm not happy with my life, right now. I lived in a huge apartment, drove a luxurious car, had hundreds of people reporting to me, and I was absolutely happy. And now I've lost everything, and who knows when I'll get it back, and I am absolutely not happy with that." The artist turned and looked at her. "It's strange," he said. "When I first saw you, feeding the cat sausage, you looked completely happy. It was just a moment, but life is made up of moments." Alice couldn't think of what to say. She just looked at the lake, remembering how she used to swim there with the kids until her lips turned blue. Then she would run home to her grandmother, who would rub her with a towel and take her to the bathhouse. The heat would penetrate to her bones. How good it felt after the bathhouse to sit at the table, wrapped in a towel, and watch her grandmother bustle about, pouring tea with milk, pushing pies towards her. But then, in the city, she remembered her huge, expensive apartment in the centre, renovated by the best designer. But she was hardly ever there, always at work. Her expensive car, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 in the evening, because there were no traffic jams. And work. Did work make her happy? Or was it the only place where she felt important, needed, where she was valued? And to not lose that, she was ready to spend her whole life there. I don't even have any friends, she suddenly thought sadly. She had friends in university, kept in touch for 6 months after graduating. Then she declined meetings because of work, and they stopped inviting her. Make friends at work? Everyone there was either a subordinate or a competitor. It was even strange that she managed to start dating Paul. Lost in such thoughts, Alice didn't notice how time passed. She came to when Arthur spoke again. I think that's enough for today. Can I see? Alice asked. Of course. He stepped aside, and she saw the painting. She was surprised. She had expected a landscape, but she saw herself. The lake and forest were far away, blurred in the background. Alice occupied most of the canvas. Her face was barely visible, but the pose, the bowed head, her inner state. Yes, you can really see how desperate I am here, Alice thought sadly. How had he managed to capture that? You didn't like it? Arthur asked, concerned. Alice forced herself to smile. It's unexpected, she said honestly. I didn't even notice you were painting me. Arthur smiled. Honestly, I didn't plan to, but I looked at you and realized I wouldn't rest until I captured this state you're in today. Alice gave an awkward little laugh. You definitely have talent. Thank you. Sorry if I embarrassed you. I'm hard to embarrass. He smiled. My sister will be back from work soon. I suggest we go back and make dinner. Haven't you gotten tired of me for the day? On the contrary, it's interesting. In the time Anna and I have lived here, I've gotten to know all the residents. I wanted something new. And then you appeared. Oh, really? So I'm just another new object for you? He laughed. Not only. I was curious before to imagine what you're really like, but I didn't expect to see it in person. Seeing Alice's puzzled look, he explained, Your neighbour, Uncle Ivan, told me a lot about you. Alice chuckled. Oh, really? And what did he say? That people like you are born rarely, that you were special from childhood, bright like the sun, strong like the wind. You never doubted your abilities. No task was beyond you. Well, that's not quite true now, Alice remarked. Not at all. That's exactly how you look. She smiled sadly. Look at your painting. Clearly not. Arthur sighed. I understand that something serious has happened to you, but I think you didn't come back here by chance. Alice laughed. So you're not just selfless, romantic, and altruistic, but also a mystic? Arthur laughed. Too much for you? Yes, but you're right. Here, I feel like I'm recovering my strength, and I'm very happy about that. The cat was waiting for them on the porch. Sandro, Alice suddenly said. That's after Sandro Botticelli, isn't it? Yes, Arthur replied. Banal. Well, the cat meowed expressively, and his owner frowned. I hoped life in the countryside would teach him to find food for himself. He does find it, Alice defended the cat, in the way he can. It was cool inside Arthur's house. The walls, as she expected, were covered with paintings. You really are very talented, Alice said, looking at them. Thank you. Will you help with dinner? Of course. By the time Anna arrived, everything was ready. Wow, she said, seeing Alice. I was just going to stop by your place today. They hugged. It was the second time Alice had seen the girl, but she felt an inexplicable liking for her. And I've been bothering your, as it turns out, very talented brother all day, Alice said. Anna laughed. Yes, he's almost a genius. All right, that's enough, Arthur grumbled. Let's eat. During dinner, Alice decided to talk about Arthur's paintings again. What I saw today is amazing, she addressed Anna, hoping for her support. It's a crime that Arthur's paintings are just hanging in your village house and no one sees them. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the artist frown, but she continued. I can look among my acquaintances for someone who can help organize an exhibition. I'm sure Arthur will have huge success and fame. To her surprise, Anna smiled and shook her head. Thank you for the offer, she replied, but we don't need that. What? Alice thought she had misheard. Okay, Arthur, but you, Anna. When we first met, I thought you were just like me. You have a business sense, and... We don't need fame, attention, or success, Arthur suddenly interrupted her. We had our reasons for coming here. I don't want any big exhibitions. I just want to live here quietly and peacefully. Alice looked at the sister, and for a second it seemed tears glistened in Anna's eyes. What's happening? Alice wondered. I just wanted to help. All right, she said aloud. I've intruded. I see you have personal reasons. She carefully got up from the table and stroked Sandro, who was perched on a nearby chair. And anyway, I've overstayed my welcome today. It was a good day. Nice to meet you. Goodbye. Neither the brother nor the sister said a word. Only when Alice had gone out the gate did a breathless Anna catch up with her. Alice, wait! Alice turned around. From the girl's slightly reddened eyes, it was clear she was on the verge of tears. Forgive us, Anna suddenly said. Honestly, I really want to be friends with you, and my brother liked you, which is rare. He tries not to let people in, and there are reasons for that. Basically, we really want to be friends with you, and about the gallery. It was a wonderful offer, but under different circumstances. It's a pity I can't tell you everything. She grabbed Alice's fingers with her small, strong hands and squeezed them tightly. Just, please believe me, there are reasons why we came here and live this quiet life, and promise not to be offended. Okay, Alice replied. I won't. The days flowed calmly. Alice called her lawyer, tried to contact the firm's management and find out about the case. There was no news. The investigation is ongoing. When it will finish and what the results will be is unclear. All that remained was waiting, which was the worst part. To keep herself busy, Alice started getting closer to her neighbours. She helped Anna in the shop, and they went to the city for supplies several times. Alice helped unload, arrange goods, and do paperwork. This is completely below your level, she once told her friend. You could easily handle a whole chain of supermarkets. If you worked for me, you'd have been in charge of a huge department long ago. Anna just smiled. I'm happy here. Alice noted the strange phrase, but decided that the time for details hadn't come yet. In her free time, she visited Arthur. Several times he took her out into nature, and Alice was surprised every time. She had lived here for so many years, but Arthur easily found places of such beauty that her breath caught. It's just a trait of every artist, he replied modestly. Another one of your talents, she clarified. The artist only shook his head. You're a very interesting girl, he remarked. When you meet strangers, you pretend to be cold, act like people don't interest you, but in reality, you're very attentive and see the good core in everyone, which the person themselves might not even suspect. Alice was embarrassed. You're praising me too much. You're underestimating yourself. I've never had problems with self-esteem. This is different. They were silent for a while. She watched Arthur sketching clouds, wondering how he managed. Then a question came. "Tell me," she asked, "how do you imagine your future in 10 or 20 years?" He sighed, looked into the distance. "That's too long a time to predict," the artist finally replied. "For now, I can say that I really like it here, and I want to stay here forever." The last word sounded a little somber, and Alice wanted to put on something warm to ward off the chills. She suddenly realized that with each passing day, she was growing more attached to the village and to this brother and sister. And then, 2 weeks later, the lawyer called. "Miss Alice," he was practically jumping on the phone, "the investigation is over. No violations." He shouted, "We're waiting for you at the office tomorrow. You can return to your apartment." Alice exhaled sharply, sat down on the floor. Her head swam. "You're not joking?" she asked, just in case. The lawyer was taken aback. "Good heavens, of course not." "Sorry, it's just unexpected. Thank you for the news." She put the phone on the floor, trying to compose herself. Of course, this was wonderful news, and the joy should be immense. But for some reason, her first thought was that this meant leaving the village, returning to the endless work cycle without a moment's peace. "Meow!" Alice turned her head in surprise. It was hot, the door was open, only the sheer curtain was there. Taking advantage of this, the cat had climbed into the house and was looking at her as if Alice owed him something. "You're a cheeky one," Alice said. She got up, cut a thick slice of sausage, and gave it to the cat. He didn't look at the treat and repeated insistently, "Meow." "All right, Your Holiness, Pearlness. There's nothing else. Eat this or go home and bother your owner." "Meow," Alice sighed, scooped up the striped rogue, and went to the neighbours. "Arthur," she called into the open window, "I brought the cat." No one answered. "Arthur?" Silence. She could have just left Sandro, but for some reason Alice decided to go inside. She saw Arthur immediately. He was lying on the floor, unconscious. "Arthur!" She rushed to him, checked his pulse. Alive. She immediately called Anna, explained the situation. "I'll be there in a minute," she replied instantly. Alice started thinking. His heart was beating. He was breathing. She gently patted his cheek. Arthur tried to open his eyes. "Can you hear me?" Alice asked. "Hold on, I'll call an ambulance." "No need," he whispered. "My sister." "I'm here." Anna quickly darted into the kitchen, returned with a glass of water and a pill. She helped her brother swallow it. Then she and Alice together moved him to the sofa. Assured that he was not in danger, Anna led Alice out onto the porch. "Do you know what's wrong with him?" Alice asked. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "I know," she replied softly. "It's hereditary. My mother had the same thing." Alice couldn't find the words. "No. Well, that is, it's a severe nervous system disorder. There's one injection. It's expensive. It costs so much that no fund will help." Alice swallowed. She made a decision instantly. "Tell me how much." Anna named the sum. Alice whistled. "Exactly," Anna said with a bitter smile. "We constantly don't have enough money. That's why we moved here. Arthur wants to paint while he can and live these years with me in peace." And then she cried. Alice silently hugged her. Her mind was elsewhere. She spent the rest of the day on the phone. Even selling her apartment, car, and withdrawing all her money, it wasn't enough. "Where could she get it?" Alice asked aloud. "Oh, Grandma, if you were alive, no matter how poor we were, you always came up with something, got money." She suddenly remembered asking where the money came from, and Eleanor would reply, "The house spirit gave it. But you can't take it just like that, only for a great need." Alice fell asleep with difficulty. She thought about her grandmother and was almost not surprised when she opened her eyes to see Eleanor by the bed, gently stroking her head. "Grandma!" Alice exclaimed in surprise. "Am I dreaming?" "Of course, my little one. Did I do something wrong?" "You're doing everything right, dear. I just don't understand one thing. You started living in my house. You cleaned everything. But why didn't you ever shake out the rug properly?" Alice couldn't think of an answer. Her grandmother smiled again and disappeared. Alice woke up with her heart pounding. She grabbed the heavy rug and started rolling it up. "Nonsense," she muttered aloud. "I've gone crazy." But suddenly on the floor she saw an almost invisible square trapdoor. There was no handle, she had to fiddle with it, inserting a knife. The trapdoor yielded, opening into a small cellar the size of a cupboard. Alice shone her phone flashlight inside and found an old metal chest at the bottom. Not believing her eyes, she opened the lid and gasped. "How is he?" Alice asked Anna. She hadn't been able to make it to Arthur's discharge because of things in the city, but rushed over as soon as she was free. "He's sleeping," Anna said. "Sorry, I'd invite you in, but I'm afraid of waking him." "Then come to my place," Alice suggested. The girl nodded. When they arrived at Alice's and sat down at the table, Anna said, "I haven't even properly thanked you for saving my brother." "Thank you. I'll never forget it. Consider yourself like a sister to me now." "Perhaps it's the first truly good thing I've done in my life." "Don't say that. You're a very good person. I know you sold your apartment, car, and withdrew all your money, and also—" She looked at Alice sheepishly. Alice laughed. "Yes, I also found a treasure in my grandmother's house. It sounds incredible." "Exactly. Do you think your grandmother knew?" "Of course she couldn't not know. And it seems she hinted at it in my childhood, told fairy tales. But I either didn't understand or didn't want to believe. As I understand now, she herself didn't want to use it, didn't think it belonged to her." "Oh, really?" "Yes. Grandma believed you could only take this money in a special case, and that's what happened." Anna smiled. "It's strange that I'm asking," she said. "But do you regret that everything happened this way? Not about saving my brother, meeting us, the secret, because otherwise all your property, money, treasures would have remained with you, and this way you only have your job." Alice smiled. "I don't have a job either. I wrote my resignation today." Anna's eyes widened. "What? But what about everything you talked about? Career, achievements, opportunities?" "No, I don't regret it. Yes, I would have a lot of money, but it wouldn't have made me happier. Believe me, it's strange for me to say it, but I suddenly realized that I had strived for success and wealth my whole life. Having achieved everything, I didn't become happier. To understand this, I needed to lose money, even temporarily. And it was easy for me to trade all that for Arthur's life and health. Even though I know him only a little, I'm sure he's exactly the kind of person who truly understands what life is and knows how to appreciate it." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She quickly wiped them away and asked, "And what about you? Will you stay with us?" Alice smiled. "For now, yes. I don't even know what I'll do next, but I'm happy here for now, and I'm very glad we met." "And we are happy," Anna replied. "Very." They talked a little longer, after which Anna went home to look after her brother. A few days later, Arthur was strong enough to visit his rescuer. "Shall we take a walk?" he asked when he came over. "Are you allowed?" Alice asked with doubt. "If I stay lying down, I'll die. I feel very good." Without prior agreement, they walked along the same path past the lake to the hill where Arthur had first painted Alice. "Well, I'll be," she said in surprise. "It hasn't been long, but it feels like a lifetime." Arthur smiled. As before, he spread out the blanket and they sat next to each other. "In my opinion," he replied, "that's the beauty of life. Sometimes hundreds of years pass the same way, and sometimes in a few weeks you can experience enough for a whole lifetime." Alice smiled. "I remember," she said, "how we sat here, and you asked if I believed that everything that happened was necessary." "Yes, that happened. I was terribly angry with you then," Alice admitted. "I thought you were just an eccentric who didn't know life, imagining himself a romantic and philosopher." Arthur laughed. "But every word I said was the pure truth. I really am like that." "That's just a small part of you. You and your sister are amazing people. Now I'm sure our meeting was fate." He turned his head, looking with curiosity. "And you don't cease to surprise me, Alice. As I said, you see the good in people, even if you didn't show it at first. But I'm surprised you're still not ready to admit that you see the good in yourself too. You know you are smart, hard-working, capable of achieving incredible success, but you stubbornly refuse to admit that you are a wonderful person, worthy of love and friendship, someone impossible not to love. It's as if you do everything to make people think you are cold and unfeeling. If my sister and I helped you see your true self even a little, I am very happy." Alice suddenly felt hot tears streaming down her face. She didn't hold back, moved closer to Arthur. He hugged her, and she rested her head on his shoulder. No more words were needed. They just sat together, looking at the lake illuminated by the sun, and Alice felt as if a huge burden she had carried since childhood had fallen from her shoulders. She didn't know what would happen next. Would she and Anna remain friends? Would there be a relationship with Arthur? But she was firmly sure she would never again lose her true self.